السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إلها واحدا أحدا فردا صمدا حيا قيوما، نؤمن له بالربوبية ونقر له بالعبودية، من يهدي الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا، ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وصل اللهم وسلم على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين والشهداء والصالحين وعترة نبيك الطاهرين. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل. قال تعالى في كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها. صدق الله العلي العظيم، وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. As we welcome the upcoming blessed months of Rajab, Sha'ban, and Ramadan, the months of new beginnings, new spiritual growth, and a newfound dedication to our faith and our development. Coincidentally, we're also in the first month of the Gregorian calendar, where people set out to establish new habits, make resolutions, and find permanent change. But why is it that for the vast majority of us and the vast majority of the world, it's increasingly difficult to make those new habits sustainable and permanent? Even when we have sincere efforts, even when we experience those occasional bursts of motivation, it seems like some of the habits that we want to take on, whether they have to do with our spiritual life, such as reciting Quran on a regular basis, praying our prayers on time, associating with the right group of people, or in any other facet of our life. It might have to do with our career or our finances or our family or our health. It seems like the habits that we want to stick around don't seem to, whereas the habits that we don't want to stick, they find permanence in our lives. And I just want to share a few thoughts with you that I came across recently by thought leaders and experts in this field, that when it comes to our habits and the formation of new habits, what the challenge is that, number one, is that we try to change the wrong thing, and number two is that we try to change our habits in the wrong way. What does that mean? And today I want to take a few minutes and talk about the relationship between our identity and our habits. You might be thinking, well, what do habits have to do with our identity? What thought leaders have said in this field is that when it comes to behavioral change, meaning taking on a good habit and letting go of a bad habit, there are 3 layers of behavioral change. And you can think about these 3 layers of behavioral change like the layers of an onion. The more you peel back, the more increasingly difficult it becomes, and the more you might have to shed a few tears. These 3 layers of behavioral change are the following. You have outcomes, processes, and identity. What are outcomes? Outcomes are the desired outcomes that we want to establish. I want to be fit. I want to be financially fit. I want to be spiritually fit. I want to write a book. Whatever it is, it's the result. It's the outcome. This is one layer of behavioral change. The second layer, going in a little bit deeper towards the core, are processes. And processes refer to the habits and the systems that we implement in our lives in order to achieve the desired results, in order to achieve the desired outcome. So for instance, as an example, if the outcome that we want is to write a new book, that would be the outcome. The process would be the system, which is every day when I wake up, I write 1 page or I write 5 pages. This is the system. This is the second layer of behavioral change. The third layer resides deep in the core, and it refers to your identity. Not just the systems that you're going to change, not just the outcome that you're pursuing. The identity has to do with changing your beliefs, changing your worldview, changing your self-image, the image that you have of yourself. The reason why most people fail in adopting new habits and achieving what they want in life is because normally we look at the core. We say, okay, normally we look at, the surface. We say, okay, well, this is the outcome that I want, and this is the system that I'm going to change. But if you really want to change your habits and change your outcomes, it has to begin with your identity. And your nafs is part of your identity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran in Surah Al-Shams, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا. He swears by the nafs, the soul, and how He has proportioned it, how He has balanced it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not just create us, our bodies, our nafs, our spirit, but He also balanced us and proportioned us. يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك. O man, what has deluded you regarding your Lord? The one who created you, balanced you, and proportioned you. Not just created you. He gave you balance and He gave you proportion. He says in Surah Al-Shams, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. He balanced it and then He taught it. He gave it knowledge and wisdom and discernment of wickedness and righteousness. And He allowed the nafs to choose either wickedness or righteousness. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Who are the ones that succeed? The ones that start with the purification of the nafs. And this is how change really happens. It starts with the core, deep down, the nafs, the identity. Most people begin with resolutions by changing their habits from the outside in. They look at the system, they might implement a new routine. They might start going to the gym first thing in the morning instead of putting it off later, thinking that that is going to create permanence. And it may. But until a behavior becomes part of your nafs, becomes part of your identity, becomes part of who you are, it has very little chances of becoming permanent. So, in practical terms, how do you establish this? Well, let me give you an example of how it works. Systems, processes, outcomes, and identity. If you offer a man a cigarette and he says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." It's different than if you offer another man a cigarette and he says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." Outcome might be the same. One of them still identifies as a smoker. I'm trying to quit. Whereas the other one does not identify with being a smoker at all. It comes from his identity. Do you see the difference? So when we adopt something as part of our identity, as our nafs, when we start to change our beliefs, when we start to change our worldview, our paradigm, our self-image, we're more likely to instill the systems and instill the habits which get us our desired outcomes, which get us our desired results. It has to become part of who you are. Most people, when they seek to improve, they don't even consider the identity. They don't consider, is this who I really am, or is this just a cloth that I'm putting on? Some of us, we take on new habits, not even because we enjoy the habit. It's because we're a part of an association or group of people where that's the norm. And so in situations like that, when you take on bad habits in that fashion, you're not even thinking about your identity. You're not even thinking about your nafs and whether this habit is actually part of who you are. Whereas if you were to stand and question, who am I as an individual, and develop that level of self-awareness, then the road starts to become clear and easy. Because behind every system of actions are a system of beliefs. And those beliefs can be conscious or unconscious, subconscious, superconscious. Meaning that you can give it thought, or it might be something that's a belief that's buried within that you've never really explored, and that's what's driving you towards that habit or that behavior. Most people don't really take the time to think about their identity, their nafs, and who they are on the inside. And belief and actions that are not congruent with our beliefs and our identities, they don't stick around. You know, there was a story I remember sharing one time. It says that Mahatma Gandhi was invited to speak to the British House of Commons. And, you know, this was a man who led resistance against the British Empire, so you can imagine when he walked into that room, the atmosphere was adversarial, to say the least. And he spoke for 2 hours without any notes, without having to pause. And that audience transformed from a hostile audience to one that stood up with a standing ovation. And when they asked his secretary, they said, what's the secret behind his effectiveness? I mean, he doesn't seem like a very complex individual from the way he dresses or from the way he presents himself. He said the following. This was his reply. He said, what he thinks, what he feels, what he speaks, and what he does are all in alignment with one another. They're congruent. He says, you and I, right, we think one thing, we feel another thing, we say a third thing, and we do a fourth thing, which is why we need notes, including yours truly, because there's no congruence, because we're scrambling. What do I believe? What do I say? Is what I'm saying in line with what I truly believe? Is what I'm doing in line with what I'm saying? And this is why we have this crisis, and this is why we experience imposter syndrome, and this is why we doubt ourselves. But if what you believe, what you think, what you say, and what you do are one, congruence, alignment, no conflict, no resistance. So most of us, when we try to change, number one, we try to change the wrong thing. We try to change our outcome or the system without actually changing who we are as individuals. Whereas if you make that decision, for instance, if you're trying to improve your financial life and you're trying to get in a better situation, you might go, study an online course on how to save and how to invest and how to manage your budget. And that's great. That's a new system. But until you identify with being a good steward of the money that is sent to you, there's always going to be that tug of war on the inside. Should I actually be doing this, or should I just go and spend and not invest and just enjoy my life because you only live once? But if you identify as a good steward, if you identify as a saver, if you identify as that individual, then the systems will come naturally. And when the systems and habits are established, you get the results over time, compounded over time. So again, it goes back to the nafs. And during this time of year, Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan, we're encouraged to take on new habits. We're encouraged to explore the nafs and change the nafs. And people say things like, I'm going to fast a few days on Rajab and Sha'ban. I'm going to start reading Quran every day. I'm going to make sure that I'm praying on time. But before you do that, you need to ask yourself, is this congruent with who I am as an individual? Because if you don't change the nafs, if you don't change and adjust your identity, then you're going to struggle every time you open the Quran. You're going to struggle every time you sit on the prayer mat. Because there's no congruence, there's alignment. You're facing internal resistance. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I repeat again, when He created the soul and balanced it, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. He gave it ilham. Ilham is teaching through divine inspiration. فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Wickedness and righteousness. Good and evil. You get to choose. You get to choose how you shape your identity, which eventually leads to your habits and your outcome. Really, the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes part of your identity. Then you're not worrying about short bursts of motivation or, some people say, well, I sincerely want to change, but you're changing the wrong thing and you're doing it the wrong way. So behavior change eventually becomes identity change. And when you reach this level of identity change, it's not about doing anymore, it's about being. Who is the person that I have to be in order to implement these systems and habits to receive the outcomes that I want in my life? You start to realize it's not about what's on the outside and this new program it's about myself. Is my nafs ready? Is my nafs ready for growth and change? And until you have that conversation with yourself, you're going to continue to struggle. So, going back to that idea of identity, which really has to do with our worldview, our paradigm, the lens by which we view the world around us, and our image. The biggest obstacle for most people when they take on a new habit, do you know what the biggest obstacle is? It's not criticism from the outside. It's not, some people say, well, if I lose weight, my family is going to tell me, well, you're getting skinny and all this, and it's got nothing to do with that. Most people, their image gets in the way. Their own self-image gets in the way. They don't see themselves as deserving of accomplishing and being where they want to be. Because again, it's not in line with who they've told themselves they are. And much of it comes from the negative self-talk, right? I'm not worthy enough. I'm always late. I'm bad at remembering people's names. I'm terrible with directions. I'm not a morning person. I'm not good with technology. I'm horrible at math. All the things that we repeat to ourselves, which affirm that within our nafs, our identity, that's the reason why your behavior is not changing, and that's the reason why your outcomes are not changing, because it starts within yourself. The more deeply a thought or action is tied to your identity, the more difficult it is to change it. That's why people have a hard time letting go of bad habits, because it becomes so ingrained that it becomes part of their identity. This is why the Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, in Surah Nuh, when he spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it came time to hold those people responsible, he says, وَقَالَ نُوحٌ رَبِّ لَا تَذَرْ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ دَيَّارًا إِنَّكَ إِن تَذَرْهُمْ يُضِلُّ عِبَادَكَ وَلَا يَلِدُوا إِلَّا فَاجِرًا كَفَّارًا. That, oh Allah, this was the request of the Prophet Nuh. After 950 years, he got just a little bit fed up. He said, oh Allah, if you decide to punish them, then annihilate them. Don't keep any of them. Because disobedience and evil has become part of their identity. It's become part of who they are. And if you leave them, they will do nothing but produce another generation which will replicate them. It's part of their nafs. That's why we have a hard time letting go of the bad habits. So, what's the two-step process for changing the identity? Number one is that we need to figure out who we are. Who are you as an individual? Who is the type of person? Before writing down your resolutions and what you're going to do in order to achieve those results, who are you as an individual? Are you a reciter of the Quran? Are you a person who establishes the prayer? Or are you just trying out prayer or trying out reciting the Quran? Nothing wrong with that, and no judgment, because any habit that you repeat, eventually it becomes part of your identity. But if you're asking the question of why can't I hold up this habit, you have to check your nafs, look within. So decide the type of person you want to become, and then prove it to yourself with small wins and small victories. It could be a simple victory. If you're praying once a day, your victory may be praying twice a day. If you're praying twice, your small victory may be praying 3 times. Don't have to overwhelm yourself, but make the decision to be the type of person that you want to become, and then prove it to yourself through small victories and small habits. And this is how we begin to flourish spiritually, intellectually, physically, financially, socially, is when we decide the type of person that we want to become, and then we prove it through small victories. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow these upcoming months to be months of change and growth for us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to develop spiritually, intellectually, socially, financially, in all areas of life. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide relief to all of those worldwide who are in need. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وصل اللهم وسلم على أوصيائه وخلفائه علي أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المحجلين وعلى البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبط نبي الرحمة وسيدي شباب أهل الجنة الحسن والحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل. Brothers and sisters, I'd like to share with you a hadith that I came across on the power of gratitude. And this is from Sayyid al-Shuhada, Al-Imam Abi Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam. He says the following. He says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills to lead a servant to gradual destruction, He bestows upon him with graces and does not favor him to show gratitude for these graces. This is the path to eventual destruction. That a person is given blessings. They're given their provisions. However, they do not remember to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not that receiving abundant blessings is bad. Money is not evil. Money is not the root of all evil. And if it's evil and you have some extra, you could just pass it forward. I'll take care of it for you. What's evil is when we receive blessings, but we forget about the giver, the bestower, Al-Wahhab. One of the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Wahhab is the supreme giver, the supreme bestower. The opposite is true, meaning that if Allah wants to lead someone to the path of development and growth, He gives him and He allows him to use his tongue for gratefulness, to be thankful. Al-Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam teaches us a wonderful lesson in the treasure chest that is Dua Abu Hamza Thumali. He says, "O Allah, He says, وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ عَلَى بَسْطِ لِسَانِي. In the list of things that he is grateful for, he says, وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ عَلَى بَسْطِ لِسَانِي. To you, I give praise that you extended my tongue, meaning that you made my tongue able to give thanks to you. Because if you did not, if you paralyzed my tongue, I would not be able to give thanks to you. وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ عَلَى بَسْطِ لِسَانِي. And then he says, أَفَبِلِسَانِي هَذَا الْكَالْ أَشْكُرَكَ. How is it? How can I exhaust my tongue to thank you for all of the blessings that you have sent my way? Even if I tried, my tongue would be exhausted. I could not fully comprehend and thank you. So then, how do we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when the Quran says, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you try to account for the blessings, you'd not be able to count them. I'll share with you a hadith. It says that the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he said the following. أوحى الله تعالى إلى موسى عليه السلام. God said to Musa, يا موسى اشكرني حق شكري. Thank me in the way that I am deserving. I command you to thank me in the way that I am deserving. فقال يا رب كيف أشكرك حق شكرك. He says, oh Lord, how do I do that? How do I thank you in a way that you deserve? If I try to count everything that you've blessed me with, I won't be able to count it. I can't take it into account. So he says, يا موسى, O Musa, شكرتني حق شكري حين علمت أن ذلك مني. You have thanked me in what is due as soon as you acknowledged that I was the source of those blessings. As soon as you acknowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate source of blessings, because if you try to talk about it with your tongue, if you try to mention it, if you try to count it, if you try to do an audit, the most talented financial auditor won't be able to audit the blessings of God in his life. He says to him, يا موسى شكرتني حق شكري حين علمت أن ذلك مني. Once you came to that realization, O Musa, that everything I have given you, once you have acknowledged it in your mind and in your heart, then you have thanked me in the way that I have requested from you. So the path to blessings in life is to receive the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to use our tongues in gratitude and in thankfulness. Especially on a day like this, the day of Friday, a great day, a day that we gather and congregate to remember God's blessings in our lives. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase His blessings upon us. Oh Allah, we ask you on this day of Friday, we acknowledge that you are the source of our blessings. And we ask you, oh Allah, to increase the blessings in our life. We ask you, oh Allah, on this day, to bring relief to all of those worldwide who are in need of relief. We ask you, oh Allah, to allow this gathering and this congregation to be a source of forgiveness for us. We ask you, oh Allah, to give us the power to extend our hand to all of those who are in need. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك قاضي الحاجات إنك على كل شيء قدير برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Couple of quick announcements, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, tomorrow, Saturday, January 21st, 7 p.m. is our monthly youth Quran discussion. That's here at the IECOC. We will begin with Isha prayers and the discussion. Next weekend, I believe Saturday or Sunday, make sure of that, is our monthly ladies discussion, ladies circle. There's also the banquet by the Shia Muslim Council of Southern California. Inshallah, Hajj Samir will announce it between the prayers, all of the details. Make sure you get your tickets. It's this upcoming month in February in honor of the birth of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And we hope to see all of you there, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم.